Oh, okay.
Before 10 o'clock.
All right, don't worry. We'll get you out of here.
We don't end learning because you.
There we go. L'chaim.
I guarantee you're going to be shpilkasing as soon as I get the text.
You good? Okay.
Because I want my granddaughter to be.
So we pointed out last time that chametz on Pesach is unique in that it is heter gomer. It is totally permissible before Pesach, and then once Pesach starts, it becomes completely forbidden. Isur gomer, right? Like, right, with all of the strictest rules, it's stricter than like literally anything else, right? It is stricter than anything else. Not only can you not eat it, not only can you not benefit from it, but you are also not allowed to own it at all. You're not allowed to own it, and you're not allowed to have it in your house. And even one tiny bit of drop of it is not batal be'elef, right? One drop of it falls into a gigantic pot of soup. The whole thing is awesome.
Why?
Oh, that's a good question. That's what we're going to figure out.
Is this the kind of subject matter where we pontificate in a very literary sense because we don't have a more direct explanation?
Nope.
Or do we have a more direct explanation?
We have a much more direct explanation.
Okay.
So let's take a look. We're going to take a look at the bottom of page number 1 here, just beginning with timing, because we said chametz becomes usher, becomes forbidden when?
12 hours, the burning of chametz time. Right?
Well, so you'll remember from last year Pesach that there is a final opportunity to sell chametz and a final opportunity to eat chametz and a final opportunity to burn chametz, and what's all of that about? So this is what we're going to take a look at here. So as af sheikar isur chametz chal b'shivas yimei hamatzos, even though the primary prohibition of chametz is during the 7 days of the festival of matzos, that's what the Torah refers to it, and we'll just differentiate here. It's worth pointing this out. What we call Pesach, what we refer to as the Yom Tov of Pesach, the Torah does not call Pesach. What does the Torah call it? Chag HaMatzos, right? Chag HaMatzos, the festival of matzos. The Torah does have the language of Pesach as a day, which means one of 2, 3, maybe 4 things. Sometimes Pesach means the korban, the sacrifice, right? The korban Pesach. Sometimes Pesach means the 14th day of the month of Nisan, what today we call Erev Pesach. Sometimes it means the night of Pesach, and sometimes it means from midday on Erev Pesach until either midnight or the next morning, which is the zman of the eating of the korban Pesach. That's the time that you have to eat the korban Pesach, from nightfall on the 15th of Nisan until the next morning. Either which way, according to everybody in the Torah, Pesach ends on the morning of the 15th of Nisan. We call this Chag HaMatzos, where what the Torah calls Chag HaMatzos, we refer to as Chag HaPesach. And there's a famous explanation that the Berditchever says. The Levi Yisrael Berditchever says that Hashem calls it Chag HaMatzos because he wants to honor the Jewish people. We call it Chag HaPesach because we want to honor Hashem, right? That's it's a question of relationships. There's a lot more explanations as to why we call this Chag HaPesach. But okay. This is after Ikar Isur Chametz Chal b'Shivas Yimei Matzos, even though the din is that the prohibition of Chametz is really during these 7 days. Kvar b'Chatzos Yom Yud Daled, on the 14th of Nisan, from midday Shlivnei Pesach, before Pesach, Nitztavinu lahashvis es hachametz mi ba'teinu, we are obligated to get rid of chametz from our house, right? So the obligation of getting rid of chametz is in advance of Pesach beginning. Turning over the page number 2, he says, Gam isur achilas chametz matzchil me chatzos yom yud daled shene'emar v'zavachta Pesach la'Hashem lo yisachal alav chametz. So the prohibition of the obligation to get rid of chametz, that mitzvah, that positive commandment to get rid of chametz, begins on Erev Pesach, as does the prohibition of eating chametz. The prohibition of eating chametz.
Also don't eat matzah.
Right, so that's a different reason. right? But the obligation, the prohibition against eating chametz is because the Torah tells us Zavachta Pesach LaHashem lo yisachal alav chametz, that when you have the obligation of bringing the Korban Pesach, you are also not allowed to eat chametz. That those two things kick in simultaneously. Kalomar, that is to say, mizman haroi la'akravas haPesach, at the point in time that it is appropriate, that it's fitting to bring the Korban Pesach, asur la'achal chametz, you are not allowed to eat chametz. Uzman Korban Pesach, when do we begin bringing Korban Pesach? Maschil b'chatzos yom yudala b'Nisan is from the afternoon, meaning from midday of the 14th of Nisan. Lefichach, therefore, mechatzos yom yudalad chametz asur b'achila, from the midday of the 14th of Nisan, we don't eat chametz. V'isur achila zeh kolel gam isarna, and since we can't eat it, we also don't benefit from it. Which means that on a level of deraisa, this is certainly how the Rambam paskins. On a level of deraisa, the prohibition of eating chametz kicks in on the 14th of Nisan at midday, right? At midday, that is when one is not allowed to eat chametz. And that is a separate prohibition from the prohibition of not eating chametz for the rest of the 7 days of Pesach. This is because it is Korban Pesach time, right? Korban Pesach time, you're not allowed to eat any chametz.
What kind of anah could you get from chametz if it weren't to be eating it?
Salad, give it to your neighbor, give it as a gift, feed it to your dog,
Bathe in it.
right?
No.
Right? Trade stocks and bonds, right? That was the question that we asked last week. That's not a problem, right?
Wait,
Make
so
money-
I
make
have a
money off of
question
it is
on
the
bread
that.
futures.
So our restrictions for our comments are so severe. The stocks and bonds aspect, right? The diminution or dilution of benefit, that's fine for normal non-kosher product. What about chametz?
You don't own any of it, meaning you still don't own any chametz, right?
Okay.
Right, meaning you're not benefiting from chametz. You're benefiting from a financial instrument called a stock and a bond.
Yeah, from our explanation, the way those rules work, I think we should be stricter on that if the terms are the terms, but that's a separate matter.
Right.
That's not how Judaism works. We try to be not strict on things.
I get it.
So,
It's just,
so
if owning the restaurant, like what we're saying, being like a third partner in it, like if that's enough, that's an issue. And then the fact that you own 1/1000 for 1
But you're
million
not.
of
It's
like,
a public company, and it's not actually. You don't have an ownership of it. You have an ownership of a piece based on what people believe it's worth.
Unless
But
you
still-
happen to own 51% of the
But-
shares.
Right.
If you
Then you're
were
already
a
a shareholder.
if you were a
Because you are an
33%
owner.
partner in an endeavor, right? Or let's say you, sorry, I don't want to.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, fine.
no, sure.
If we have a restaurant example, it's not publicly traded, it's privately held, it's a partnership. We have 1,000 partners involved, right? And they're all equal partners, so we all have like a 0.1 of it. So I'm a partner in it by partnership rules from what we described. If you're a minority partner, you still really can't have that ownership in like the cheeseburger place. But all of a sudden we switch it to a publicly traded company. I own 1/1000th of the company through publicly traded stocks. I don't understand what the effective difference is here, because if the thing went belly up and we're selling off assets, I still have like a 1/1000th claim on it anyway. Like it's just, I really don't get the jump.
So
from, like,
by the way,
partnership angle to the stock.
if you own assets of it, if you do directly own assets, then yeah, that's a problem.
So I guess my confusion here is I don't understand how we really draw the line between the effective ownership of assets where like it's managed by a board, but I'm an owner because I have stock, versus let's say we have a partnership, I'm a non-managing partner, but I still have a fundamental ownership of the assets of the thing. When you're a stockholder, you have a claim of right on it. It's just you're not stewarding or managing it. So this is where I get confused.
So ownership in the Torah, as far as halacha is concerned, is two things. There is balus, which is ownership, meaning technical financial ownership of it. Is there something that you own? And then there's also control, rishus, right? Something that is outside of any capacity that you have to do anything with, meaning you have no say over it ever at all.
If you were a beneficiary of a trust that you were not managing, and that was utterly controlled by a third party.
But it depends if you were hiring that, meaning if you were involved in the hiring of that manager, if you have some level of control, then you have.
Joe Biden sets up a trust for Hunter and understands So I forgot the term because I didn't want it for the bar.
Right.
It's the kind of trust where like the beneficiary cannot alienate the right to it. So you're going to get a benefit under it. You cannot sell your right off to this. You have no control over it. You are utterly passive and the recipient of the benefit here. I, as your father, will assign someone to watch it. That kind of thing. That's
I'll give you another example. The federal government owns wheat, right? Strictly speaking, every citizen in the United States of America is a shareholder within the federal government. Meaning that's how democracy works, at least officially.
That's what we're told, right?
Right?
We had democracy.
we're losing you a little bit with this
Yeah.
example, but okay.
No, but I'm saying, strictly speaking,
Yeah, it's not
I
like
feel like
you
the
got
bigger
to-
it gets,
You're dealing with
Yeah.
a lot
true
of
it becomes.
technicalities
Yeah.
here that I think need
Yeah.
a more precise definition to really.
It becomes
understand.
more
What-
true as it gets bigger. The
Meaning-
smaller the business, the less true.
Correct.
The more control you have over it, the more diluted your
Right.
share in it, the
Yeah.
less
You're
control.
certainly not
What's
in-
the tipping
in a
point?
large corporation. You're
So-
certainly not as liquid, and the fact that you can really access those assets rapidly might be.
it's not even a question of rapid or not rapid. Is that you are not deriving any benefit at any point in time from Chometz.
What if it's a beer?
You're removed
And then-
enough
and
that
then you get
See, that,
quarterly.
this is
Yeah.
what I'm chasing. This is
So-
the dragon I'm chasing. here.
so we'll get
Where-
to tighter definitions a little later. We're going to.
Retort definitions and your definitions disagree, and then all of a sudden.
That's where you have to find the common
So-
ground.
so-
And then you have to do later.
So what I will share with you as follows, this is important to understand, according to the majority of poskim today, with the exceptional breadth and depth and scope of financial instruments that exist in the world today, the halacha effectively treats financial products the same way that the American legal system does. Meaning that Western banks treat financial products as objects that are distinct from the things that they are representing. And that's more or less how most poskim hold
So
today.
it's like a corporate veil kind of thing.
Right.
Okay.
Meaning you don't actually own any physical items. What you own is rights in a thing that
Oh my God, now we're doing NFTs apparently.
exactly. None of it's real.
So the NFT for wheat of a specific area.
Right.
It's just
Does Din of the Malchus Adina have any bearing on that?
This is din of the Malchus Adina. Meaning
So you're really following. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, however, the obligation of getting rid of your chametz and not eating chametz kicks in from midday. However, this is the second paragraph. "Kedei laharchik es ha'adam min ha'avera," in order to distance a person from messing up. "Usifu chachamim va'asru es ha'chametz v'hana oid sha'a." Chachamim rolled the clock back an hour. So, on a 6 to 6 day, right? Meaning 6 a.m. sunrise, 6 a.m. sunset, or nightfall, depending on your particular shita. The Isser of Chametz kicks in at 12 noon, exactly. The Chachamim said, no, we'll start that an hour early. Uva achila, and with eating, Hosifu ve'asru shtei, and the Chachamim kicked in 2 hours of prohibition when it came to the prohibition of eating. Because on a cloudy day, for example, a person can make a mistake up to 2 hours. Meaning on a cloudy day, without clocks and without timing, those are the kinds of things that a person could get seriously messed up with, right? If you can't see the sun, you don't know what time of day it is.
But that's not the case with something as serious as Shabbos or Yom Kippur. You don't just start Shabbos an hour earlier, other than here Yerushalayim.
Right. So,
Just saying, in case it's cloudy, you start Shabbos an hour earlier.
Oh.
Why Badafka with chametz?
So chametz is unique in that it is something that is always permissible, except for Pesach. Meaning, many of the stringencies that we have with chametz are because chametz is something that is allowed the whole year. We don't have a regular frame of reference for chametz, right? Meaning, as opposed to nevela, like non-kosher cow. Non-kosher cow, you never bring into your house. You never have anything to do with it. Like if you ended up with nevela, you get rid of it instantaneously. Chametz is different.
Time actually defines what the Isser is.
Right. And since people are used to it, right? What's the big deal? It was like 15 minutes ago I could eat it. I'm sure it's okay now, right? No, that's not the case, right? Okay. This is how we calculate time. This is important to understand in general. How do we calculate time? So this is an interesting question that I sometimes ask this to my students in high school. They get very confused by the nature of the question. Because if I ask you, how long is an hour? You tell me?
60 minutes.
60 minutes. How long is a minute?
60 seconds.
How long is a second?
1,000 milliseconds.
How long is a millisecond? Meaning
It's all relative.
relative to...
As the universe expands and gravity forces
No,
change.
time is a constant.
No, it's not.
But the measurement of time
It depends where you are observing it from. Have you read Genesis of the Big Bang?
So the problem with measurements of time, right? The problem with measuring time is that we struggle to have any other frame of reference for time other than time itself, right? So as it turns out, atomic clocks, which were developed and popularized in the 60s, a second is precisely calculated in the oscillation of a particular radioactive isotope, right? I think it's cesium-130 something.
That's a phrase I've heard before, so I'll say sure.
Right. Meaning that's what an atomic clock is.
That's what I've heard, yes.
It has nothing to do with time. They found a physical constant that approximates very, 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 very closely to like how people have measured time up until then. Fundamentally speaking, there are three physical measurements of time that human beings have used throughout the ages. And these three measurements of time fundamentally, on a physical level, have nothing to do with each other. Measurement number one of time is the scale of what we refer to as a year, which is the time it takes for the... No, that's how we say it today.
Go through all the seasons?
The moon.
No,
the moon,
close.
The moon's a complete
the lunar
cycle.
year?
No, a solar year.
A solar year, so it's the Earth to go around the sun.
No, the Earth never went around the sun until
Like
Copernicus.
within, like you're thinking ancient peoples understood the concept of that.
Of a
So
year.
how else would
The
they
stars?
It is the sun traveling through the constellations and returning to the same spot.
Yeah.
Right? That was the definition. That was the definition of a year. Now it's worth understanding in general.
You mean Apollo doing that?
No, Apollo stays in the same place, right? Meaning all the constellations, all the stars stay in the same place, except for there are 12 constellations. And then what you see in Sfarim, they're referred to as the Shiva Kochvei Lechet, the 7 walking stars. What are 7 walking stars? So these are stars that don't stay put in the sky, they travel through the constellations. These 7 Kochvei Lechet are the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter.
These stars have something in common for the most part.
Right. Meaning some of them we call planets today, right?
So the celestial bodies within our solar system.
Right.
Yeah.
And those are the gods.
So in the ancient world, when people were being over the Zara, they worshipped some of these things, yeah. Or they worshipped constellations, or they worshipped the confluence of particular stars with coming into certain constellations.
Don't talk to anyone in our community about the confluence of constellations and their effects upon things. There's still a lot of that nonsense out there.
Yeah.
There was some
So
controversy.
Yeah.
What do you mean it matters?
So there are parts that Chazal speak about.
You're such a Sagittarius.
I bark at people.
What's your birthday again?
I'm
You're a Pisces?
Once a year. Once a year.
I
It's good.
bark at people. Like stop with pagan star magic. right? Like if there's one thing we can take from Rambam, it's that we get to hate this, and that our entire religion's justified by hating this.
Well, a lot of that
Right?
stuff is grounded in Judaism.
So
A lot of the Hasidic and
There's a
Kabbalah
lot
There's-
thought leaders.
there
they'll
is
talk
there
about
is a lot of this that is real, but not the stuff that is popularized
Right,
today.
you see it in Vogue magazine, and they just say a lot of vague things that are like applicable to everyone.
Yeah.
And then some girl is like, "Oh, this gets me."
You say vague affirmations and someone's
Right.
And then people are like, "This is what I needed
People
to
get
hear."
pumped about vague things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I am gonna have a good day.
right. Exactly.
This is a
That's,
sign.
I saw, sorry, briefly, I saw a very funny thing, guy railing against these things, saying, here's how you like debunk horoscope stuff for people. Let's look up Jeffrey Dahmer birthday. Oh, he was a Virgo. Oh, Virgos are really into innovative things and pushing boundaries. Yeah, I guess lobotomizing young men to become sex zombies is really just a Virgo thing, isn't it?
Right. People get very hung up on these
They went
things.
in a very specific direction.
Yeah. That's how it goes. So, first thing to know is that a year was defined as the sun traveling through the constellations and coming back to
And
the
those
same
control the
place.
months in the lunar calendar. and
No.
Judaism. Really?
The lunar calendar is determined by the moon
waxing and waning.
starting
Yeah,
from
it's in
point.
all the Jewish months. They have
Yes.
they have the constellations that apply to each of them.
Yes, those are the constellations that are most prominent or that rise during that month, meaning constellations rise and set. So you'll have in the night sky, you can see multiple constellations always, right? It's this constellation is rising, meaning is coming into view in the night sky, fifth in the year, right? During this roughly lunar cycle, starting from new moon to full moon to new moon. The lunar cycle and the solar cycle fundamentally, physically, astronomically have nothing to do with each other.
Isn't it like every few years they like sync up again?
So
Well,
what we do in our calendar is sync them up.
I have it.
We have
Why
have an
do we
unashamed.
bother? Why do we bother doing that?
Well, because the Torah cares about both. So Pesach, for example, is in Chodesh Aviv, has to be in the spring. Pesach is the first of the lunar months. But if you count off 12 lunar months and just keep on rolling, Pesach will start being in the spring very quickly. What religion struggles with us a lot? Islam. Ramadan is a floating month,
Sure.
right? Because there are 365 days, right?
It's all over. the place.
There are 365 days in a solar year, 365 and just under a quarter. And there are 354 days in 12 lunar cycles, which leaves you with a 10.5-day difference between the lunar cycle and the solar cycle, which means that every 3 years, you're going to lose a month, meaning you're going to be out of sync by a month. So we have a way of making that up in the Jewish calendar, which is 7 times every 19 years, we have a leap month. We add an additional month to the year. That's called Adar Sheni, and that's how we sync these things up. This was complicated. Right? It was complicated 2,000 years ago. It's complicated now as well. Right?
I was
That's
just going to ask, since we had an awareness of the solar cycle, why did we choose to go with the lunar cycle as our primary, given the greater constancy of the solar cycle?
So we go with both.
I understand that we work off of both, but the primacy is put on the lunar cycle.
Yes.
So I'm just curious why primary it on the lunar instead of primary it on the solar.
So
like a Babylonian or like a whatever.
yeah, so the Torah tells us that this is the very first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people in time. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodeshim. This lunar cycle is the first of your months, meaning we have a month cycle, and many of the Rishonim speak about the fact that the waxing and waning of the moon is indicative and symbolic of the Jewish people.
God's relation, our relationship to God.
Well,
We love him, we fall away, we come back.
Yeah. The ups and downs of Jewish existence. But there is a third cycle that we contend with, and that is the daily cycle, right? And it's important to understand that the daily cycle is the rising and setting of the sun from the perspective of the human observer in whatever location they are. That has fundamentally zero to do with the lunar cycle and zero to do with the solar cycle, right? Nothing whatsoever to do with it.
Depends on your latitude, longitude.
Right. But also, like, that construct has nothing to do with it. Astronomically speaking, has nothing to do with any of that. Right? These three things work totally independently. So when we try to figure out how long a year is, and we speak about it in terms of days, those two things are not necessarily talking to each other. Right? Months and years are not necessarily talking to each other. We make these things make sense by tying these things together. But when we were trying to tell time during a day, so a day effectively is from rising of sun to rising of sun, or setting of sun to setting of sun, or rising of sun to setting of sun. I mean, there's different ways of saying what a day is, right? Today we would say 12 hours, 24 hours. As far as the halacha is concerned, we determine a day as, or at least daylight, when we talk about telling time during the day, as calculating between the beginning of daylight and the end of daylight. Now, this could either be from alos hashachar, from daybreak, from dawn until nightfall, or from sunrise until sunset. There's two opinions. But the way that we calculate hours of the day is we take that block of time. Let's say the sun rises at 6 a.m. and sets at 6 p.m., 6 to 6 day, which is possible theoretically, right, on the equator, on the equinox. So you could have a 6 to 6 day, right, perfectly divided 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night. And what we'll do is we will chop that up into 12 equal slices, midday being at 12 noon, and each hour being 60 minutes. But let's say, for example, that it's the middle of the summer and the sun is rising at 5 a.m. and setting at 7 p.m.
So will vary based on the block of time.
Right.
The sun is.
So Chatzos will still be at the same time, would still be at 12 noon, right?
Right.
Okay.
But each hour of the day will be longer, right? Each hour of the day will be longer, and the same is true in the winter, right? Now, depending on your longitude, latitude, and distance from the equator, you'll end up with a shifted, right, with a varied and shifted time zone in order to figure out, like, what time of day you are at. So
That's how we said our prayer times,
right,
Yeah.
that's how we determine what time Shabbos begins and what time Shabbos ends, and that is never more applicable than Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach is the most intense day for figuring out Jewish times.
Because there's the strongest consequences, I guess.
Right.
Either or, but strongest mentality and stringencies on this.
Right, because we need to be very careful about what time of day we're at, and guesswork is not a good idea when
the stakes are this high.
yeah. So you're asking this, that is the mechalkim sayam le'shneim asar chalakim shavim, we divide the day into 12 equal slices. V'chol chelek nikra sha'a zmanis, and each is called a sha'a zmanit, which means a variable hour, because it shifts from day to day. Now, slicing up the day into these 12 slices, the first 4 hours of the day, one is allowed to eat chametz. Right? So on a 6 to 6 day, let's say Erev Pesach was 6 to 6, so from 6 until 10, eat chametz, no problem. In the fifth hour, from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m., one is not allowed to eat chametz, rabbinically. You're not allowed to eat chametz. However, you can still benefit from it. Right? You can still benefit from it. Lamashal, for example, mutar la'achil lebehema, you can feed it to your animal. Or lamachar l'goy, or to sell it to a non-Jew.
Question.
Yeah.
So if you missed the boat on the sales time window, is there some means by which you performatively, formally, whatever it is, abandon ownership of it?
Yeah.
Yes.
your habitual-
So that's what you're assumed to do?
Well,
Or you do
well,
it?
if you didn't, then you have violated the prohibition of owning chametz and Pesach. And it's machlokas whether this is a penalty that is instituted by the Torah, by the Chachamim, but practically speaking, chametz that a Jew owned on Pesach can never be. I mean, those prohibitions still apply. You are never allowed to benefit from it. Now, this comes up every year. Every year, this comes up accidentally.
Yeah.
How?
I forgot my cookies.
No. Everybody gets rid of their chametz Erev Pesach like normal, right? Meaning, most people, you sell your chametz. There's lots of opportunities. You sell the chametz, you burn the chametz, you look for the chametz, you give it away, you eat it, whatever you
Put it
do.
away. Yes, you would away something.
Every year, somebody ends up asking the shaila, and I try to remind people every single year. But every year, this comes up somewhere. It hasn't happened every year in this community, but I remember this was 4 or 5 years ago. Somebody called me up, said, "Rabbi, what am I supposed to do?" I remember it was the middle of Chol Hamoed Pesach. They had their regular subscribe and save Amazon order that showed up at their house. That had like chewy bars, whatever it was. That's like real chametz,
That was on a subscription.
I totally forgot that it was on a subscription. Now, if it's showing up and you refuse delivery, send it back to Amazon, that's fine. You can refuse delivery. It's not yours yet. It's yours when you pick it up, take it inside. Right? Somebody picks it up, takes it inside. So like one of the kids, whatever, just picked it up, brought it inside, opened the box because they were excited. Hey, whenever Amazon packages come, yay! So somebody's got a present or something. So I get this frantic phone call. Exactly, right? I get this frantic phone call saying, "Rabbi, what am I supposed to do? I've got like all these chewy bars in the house. What am I supposed to do? There's this big box of chewy bars." I'm like, burn it.
Can't even give it to homeless people?
No, you cannot benefit from it at all, right?
Wait, how does a Jew benefit from giving it to homeless people?
Okay, you're giving a gift.
You feel good. It's chesed.
Meaning
You're
your
not-
obligation
you're not
now.
giving it to someone, and
It's
then
not
they
being
are
destroyed
gonna-
and wasted. Someone's
If I give it to a non-Jew for
you're
them to
getting
learn,
some
and they decide
satisfaction.
to give it to
I would
a homeless man.
Maybe.
That's the deal that's unspoken.
Right.
Wait,
So
wait.
no, your obligation is to destroy it. You're not obligated to destroy it.
You're obligated
No,
to
what
destroy
if
it.
Yeah.
it's 18-year-old scotch? That's a bigger question.
By the way, these things come up.
Well, I'm sure they do.
Right.
You
Yeah.
You just take a rag, you put it in there, and you let it
Um,
I mean,
If
throw
you
it
find
in
a
your
cop
eyes.
car,
Now-
support the struggle.
we should point out that historically there were some tragedies that occurred. Tremendous anti-Semitism that happened throughout the Middle Ages. There were many places, especially in like Ashkenaz, that Jews were not allowed to own land. And the only way that Jews made money was either money lending, tax collecting, those kinds of things, which obviously made them not well loved. Or they had liquor licenses. A Jew could pay to have the license to make and sell liquor. And most of the liquor wasn't distilled, it was beer, right? Which is obviously chametz gomer, right? Beer is fermented wheat, barley, something or another, right? Meaning potatoes, not chametz. Vodka is fundamentally not chametz, but wheat and barley for sure is.
Most vodkas we can bring, but
I'm saying, meaning
when you make it.
saying potato vodka in Russia, like
You can buy
Yeah.
potato vodka. For
Right.
that stuff, yeah.
Meaning, strictly speaking, you could make vodka out of anything, and in Russia, they did. That's but whatever grain alcohol you have to get rid of. Jews in places that anti-Semitism was rife, which was a lot of them. Jews that had these alcohol businesses. The non-Jews would get together and conspire that nobody would buy this Jew's chametz.
I would think they would buy it and just refuse to return it.
No, nobody
The
would.
Shtar would say you must return it, or
Meaning,
in other words, they wouldn't give anyone an opportunity to.
they would ensure that nobody bought it, which meant that the Jew would have to before.
Destroy it,
Well,
give it away, or
so what he would do is he didn't want to destroy it before it became time, but what Jews would do is they would end up having to take like barrel after barrel of alcohol, take it out of their house like down to the river and just leave it as hefka, meaning I don't own this anymore, and walk away from it. And then like the non-Jews would come and anti-Semitic, they would come and they would take all the beer. There were other tremendously anti-Semitic things that once in certain places the non-Jews found out that Jews wouldn't that chametz isn't bottle on Pesach. So on Erev Pesach they would go and they would take bread and throw it into the well, just loaf after loaf of bread, and throw it into the well, so Jews couldn't drink water the whole of Pesach. So in many communities, in order to have water to drink for Pesach, you had to pre-draw all the water that you would need for the whole of Pesach.
And we have anxiety and depression.
Well, these are real problems. These are very serious problems.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Right.
You have to draw water. You don't just press a button.
No buttons. No. This was when Poland Spring was actual.
It was in Poland.
Right.
Yeah,
It's,
Poland Spring, that Poles Spring some bread in there.
right. This is not just like a guy in Delaware filling up bottles in his bathtub, right? It's probably what it is.
Yeah.
Probably.
There's a lot of good stand-up comedy from the 90s about it.
Right. So that's the Isser. Okay. So up until hour number 4, you can eat chametz, no problem. There are people that have a custom not to, fine. And then there are dafka people that have a custom to eat chametz on the morning of Erev Pesach, right? Why would you dafka eat chametz on the morning of Erev Pesach?
Embracing mitzvot by flexing what you can do in preparation for what you can't do. I'm
So
sure.
there's
I think really you want to show a delineation between I'm eating it now and an hour from now I can't eat it and you're not going to find.
I got the right mentality.
So there's a furthermore there is a halachic reason for insisting on eating chametz on Erev Pesach, and that is Bal Tosef. There is a prohibition in the Torah in adding on to the mitzvahs of the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, somebody says,
on a stringency that doesn't exist.
right, not only am I not going to eat chametz for 7 days, I'm not going to eat chametz for 8 days.
So how is it an hour or two they adding on also Baltosif?
No,
Because that's because of a doubt or a
Meaning-
error
you can eat it in the morning. That's not a problem.
in that first 4.
Right. I'm not adding. Meaning the Torah says shivas yom, right? 7 days. Now it doesn't mean that you have to eat.
But we do add an 8th day.
So we add an 8th day out of a suffix.
But we don't have that suffix anymore.
We do.
What's this stuff?
A doubt. We'll do a special share before
You
Yom on.
don't have a Sanhedrin now. So
It's,
how can you
Okay.
possibly...
So all things that are obvious, we have to just go along.
No, not necessarily. The question is, why do we keep 2 days of Yom Tov outside of Israel today when we know what the calendar is?
Or if you go to
So-
Israel, you have to.
Maybe. But we'll talk.
Maybe we have this conversation.
Right, so we're gonna talk about all of
I'm not
this.
going to Israel because of our conversation.
Exactly. We're gonna talk about all of this. The second day of Yom Tov.
The Chatzah Yom Tov thing, that doesn't sit well.
So the second day of Yom Tov we'll get to. We'll do a special share on that. Okay. Let's just finish off this paragraph here because Enoch has to go pick up
I
manners.
do have to go. I got the text.
From your drug dealer, Walgreens.
Drug dealer. The drug is ready.
Right. Okay.
It's
So-
code.
Right. So Misha Nichnas Shah Shishis from the 6th hour of the day. From the 6th hour of the day, you cannot benefit from your chametz either. And if you didn't sell it to a non-Jew by the 6th hour of the day, by midday, you need to now get rid of it, destroy it completely. And when you get to midday, right? When you get to midday, she says at the end of the 6th hour, you've now finished 6 hours. That's you are now forbidden from eating and benefiting from your chametz on a level of deraisa from the Torah. And you have to do as much as you can very quickly to get rid of it, destroy it. And any time and every moment that you own this chametz without destroying it, you're in violation of the positive commandment of destroying your chametz.
And at that point, it's a Doraisa.
So, wait,
Yes.
So you're saying, let's say that we're past the point of burning the chametz and I haven't burnt my chametz yet. Can I still burn my chametz?
You have to.
Okay, but if I'm on my way to doing it and my wife is saying you waited too long and I can tell her no, you're wrong.
Meaning you might still be late, but you still have to burn it.
Right.
right?
I'm just saying, like, if I'm 2 hours late to burning my chametz, that's okay.
No, it's not okay. You still have to burn it.
I'm on my way to burning it.
No, it's like the IRS with your taxes. You have to pay them on time. If you haven't paid them,
Gotta pay a
it's
penalty.
not okay. You still have to pay them though. You're just late. It's like it's
And
Is
when
that-
it comes
is
to your
that
wife,
such a
you're
big
never right, so just move on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your wife is the same as the IRS in this. It's the same thing.
Well, they can borrow my money interest free, but then they charge me. if I'm
Exactly.
borrowing their money.
Exactly. You need to burn your chametz on time. If you didn't, you still have to burn your chametz.
Right.
you just gotta feel bad about it.
Now, it happens to be, and the Shulchan Aruch has a lot to say about this. What happens if you accidentally find chametz on Yom Tov? You can't like make a fire to burn it on Yom Tov.
Transfer
No, because that would not be for any positive reason. You don't. Yeah. So there's a lot to speak about. And certainly if it's on Shabbos, like what do you do if you find chametz on Chol
a
Hamoed?
naturally occurring flame. We
Right.
have some for one.
Exactly.
And
Can we use the chametz
Back
burning
then-
for like warmth?
No, you can't use it for fuel. That's benefit.
You gotta make sure.
Chametz,
that
chametz
it's gotta be
fuel.
a very cold flame. What were you gonna say?
No, it's right. Back then they didn't have toilets to flush it down either.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's not.
Right.
We have it a lot easier.
We do.
Much easier.
1,243. Yeah.
Just think of how many emails you're gonna get to remind you, don't forget, burning comments, last month to eat, last month to burn.
Right.
Hey, I ignore emails.
Exactly.
Well, this year you won't.
So once the Yom Tov has started, there are an additional 2 isurim of Bal Yirah and Bal Yamatzeh. That's ownership and having it in your jurisdiction. V'af isur achila na'aseh chomer yoseh, and eating it is now more stringent, right? On Erev Pesach, eating chametz is a prohibition that one would technically get lashes for. Eating chametz on Pesach has the from the Jewish people from eating in the Torah, eating chametz on Pesach.
So, sorry, question regarding kares. Is that a descriptive or a normative punishment? What I mean by that is along the lines of there's an affirmative obligation on your community to shun you or
No.
do some sort. So it's more just along the lines of you have the result of cutting yourself off from your people by your frivolity towards the standards.
Yes. Now, what?
That's what I figured, and something Abigail and I thought.
Karis is a potentially life shortening, that's what it is.
Right.
But it's
Well,
not done by
clear.
people, it's not done
It's
by
not clear
people.
to clear your life. It's
So there are 3 potential explanations for kares, and it might be that there are different levels of kares because the person can get kares multiple times, right? Meaning every kazayas of chametz that one eats on Pesach, one incurs an isur kares.
Speaking of cards, if you know someone who was born and they're a boy and they're Jewish, what obligation do I have to convince the parents to give them
As much as possible.
Make them uncomfortable. Do real
Should I
awkward.
call him Hitler?
No, because
Well, is that calculated to
See,
work?
that's gonna bring them up into the front.
Right.
Or should I say they're doing Hitler's work by cutting off a few?
No.
No, but
Call them Haman and then say you would know what I'm talking about if you raised your kid Jewish.
I don't even raise their kid Jewish. It's just
even talk about the continuity from past generations, that all the males had this, it's.
as much as possible. As much as possible. Yeah. Meaning the din is that the obligation of bris milah is first and foremost on the parents and the father specifically, but parents in general.
father's
Um,
not Jewish.
So then mother is obligated, and if not, the community is obligated, meaning anybody that can, and if not, the child becomes obligated when they want to become bar mitzvah.
To self-circumcise or to delegate?
Well, you don't have to do it yourself. You can
pay
delegate.
You can pay someone to do it. Don't
Right.
worry.
That's it's a pretty
take
brave
charge.
thing
You take
at the
charge
age of
too.
13.
Well, I mean, Auburn did it herself.
Right.
I remember
I don't
when
think
the
they
Russian
understand
Jews
that.
came in the 70s, what was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I know doctors that, you had adults, not just, you had older people, younger people, anyone over the age of 8 days that couldn't get a bris milah.
Yeah.
They were lining up in the hospitals. I mean, they were doing it under anesthesia.
Never too late for a makeover.
That's right. That's yeah.
But that was pretty amazing.
Karis means the Rishon Rat. It means other something completely spiritual, meaning after you die, something spiritual, or it means that your life is shortened. Right? That's actual. Like you will be cut off from your people. That is a death sentence from Shemaim. Like you will die. Yeah, like, and something. Yeah, or that if you have children, that your children will all die during your lifetime, so that your family is cut off. Or potentially that if you don't have children, that you will be incapable of having children, meaning that either way you die childless, or some combination of these things. All of that is correct.
Joke about what's the difference between Trump and a Reform Jew? Trump has Jewish grandchildren.
Right, which is a terrible joke. But right.
Family line just kind of dissipates from affiliation with the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good one. I never heard that. That's funny.
It's
and to wit, my family, right? My sister, her kids, my dad, all his childhood friends, every single one of them married out. Oh, no, his friends' daughters all married out. None of them had sons. So, like, just out of every single person my dad knew growing up, all Jews, I am literally the only one born of that generation who will have like Jewish children raised in the faith in any way.
wow.
We're talking like over like 9 like other people involved, just only one with any connection.
Wow.
I'm the last Morris male who's Jewish and straight.
That which is awesome.
Hoops to jump.
Today that's
We had 2 girls so far.
both of those are complicated, right? That's we don't take any of this for granted. Yeah. So that's the additional issue. We'll just finish off this paragraph here. Somebody that eats chametz of Pesach has kares. Shneimar kol ha'ochel chametz v'nichrosa nefesh hahi miyishol miyom rishon ad yom hashvi. Anyone that eats chametz gets kares, and this is true from day 1 until day 7 of Pesach. It's not just on day 1. It's not just on the Yom Tovs. It's throughout the 7 days of the Chag. And that is the prohibition of chametz from Erev Pesach until the end of Pesach. And please God, next time we will continue with halachas of chametz after Pesach.
Thank you, Rabbi.